Good evening to all of you. I'm Anjali. I'm the coordinator of this conference. Very good evening to all the members who have joined here. And this is the first conference which we are conducting as a virtual. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as all of you know that, I'm proud of being here as part of DNA Con 2021. Since I am a member of this DNA Con since 2012, and I'm privileged to get an opportunity from our respective nursing superintendent, Mrs. Ranjit Kar, and as well as very supportive and coordinated by Dr. Achal, who is the secretary of this conference. The theme of this conference is reflection of neuronursing in the pandemic. Now, I would like to invite Ma'am Veena Malhotra, who is the DNA member and DNA coordinator since it was started. Ma'am, Veena ma'am, please you can. Yeah, he is doing.
Hi guys, good evening to all of you. On behalf of DNA, I welcome all of you to annual meeting of Neuro Nurses Update is a 19th annual conference now, which is virtual. It may not have the scene, which we normally have such a meeting, but still it is a important activity and a new experience to share with all of you. And 19 Neuro Nurses Update was founded, Delhi Neuro Nurses Association was founded in the year of 2003 by the selected nurses interested in neurosciences under the guidance of Delhi Neurological Association. Since 2003, we are doing a regular meeting with the neuro colleagues. Our participation has been widely appreciated, even at national level. And I have tried to register the society, but it has not been possible so far because of technical issues. Approximately 150 to 200 nurses, more than 200 already participate in this meeting, which is testimonial for its success. And I would ask younger colleagues to participate in this activity in the function of association for its survival in the future. And now, once again, I welcome to all of you, and I am Anjali. Proceed for the scientific session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now let me move on to the...
Anjali, please remove your mask.
Thank you. Because we are here 10 more members, that's why. Other than nothing. So let's move on to the paper presentation. I would like to invite our chairpersons, Dr. Shashi Mawar, Associate Professor, College of Nursing. Hope that madam is available here. And Dr. Seema Sachdeva, Lecturer, College of Nursing, AIMS, New Delhi. Thank you, ma'am, for being earlier. Then Ms. Yangchen Tolma, Quality Improvement Mentor, Senior Nursing Officer of RP Center, AIMS, New Delhi. I would like to invite all of you for this paper presentation and hope that you can carry out the presentations as per your schedules. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjali. And I welcome all the speakers for the paper presentations for today. And without wasting much of the time, I'll just review one or two rules for the paper presentation. So we have 9 presentations in total, and we'll be giving 5 minutes plus 2 minutes for each presenter. And Madam Anjali will be taking the time record, and she'll be informing exactly at 5 minutes. And then 2 minutes will be there for the discussion. So there are just 5 minutes for the paper presentation. With this, I invite the first speaker, Neeraj Rai from Zipmar. who is going to have present a paper on impact of COVID pandemic on workplace. Over to Neeraj.
Good evening, judges and my dear friends. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. Myself, Neeraj Rai. I'm working as a nursing officer in GV Pant Hospital. Today, I'll be talking on impact of COVID on the working of healthcare workers in neurosurgery operation theatre. So, as we all know that COVID-19 has emerged an important health parameter in the year 2020. There has been a widespread media coverage.
Yes,
So,
please go.
more than 85% people are aware of mode of transfer of the disease and 97% knew about its symptoms. Adherence to the government directive and public perspective is a challenge more among the healthcare workers. My aims and objective of this study is to assess the perspective and behavior of healthcare workers in OT and the adherence to government directives in COVID period. It is a pilot study. A structured questionnaire was given to various healthcare workers in the neurosurgery operation theatre. It included 3 categories: doctors, nurses, technicians, and class 4. This is the questionnaire which I circulated among all the healthcare workers. It included 5 parameters: fears, social effects, and adherence to the COVID discipline, donning, doffing manners, and PPE kit availability. Total 85 workers are in our operation theatre. From 85, 75 people received this questionnaire. There is out of the 75, 65 people responded back. And out of the 65, 25 were doctors, 28 nurses, and technicians and class 4 were 12. This is the master chart of my study. So this is the overall result of all the healthcare workers. This slide shows maximum fear was among the, one second, which pointer? Okay, maximum fear was found maximum fear was among about 88% was fear was the spread to the family fear. So if we see here, sorry for that, this 48% is the transport issues faced by the various workers during this COVID period. All the strict COVID discipline was maintained by almost 80% of the people at workplace as well as at the home. Donning, doffing was there was hesitancy in the initial phase, and it affected the routine as well. And 24% of the people, they said that there was shortage in the daily routine. So one by one, I will cover up these all 5 aspects. First was fear. So maximum fear among these healthcare workers was spread to the family, followed by self-infection of the COVID and hospitalization. Here, one surprising result has came out that the fear of death among the technical staff was just 8%, followed by 17% fear of hospitalization or vaccination. So if you compare with the other healthcare worker like doctors and nurses, so it is quite less. So if you look at social effect, maximum fear was related to the transport issue, and doctors and nurses also face the same problem. And these doctors, surprisingly, 40% of doctors, they got the COVID infection, 36% they told that their family got infected. And one more surprising fact is that there was 48% of doctors, they told that there was death in the known because of the COVID. So at workplace, everybody maintained the strict COVID discipline, and maximum was in the technical technicians and the class 4 worker. Here, surprising fact is that there is little reduction in the this COVID discipline at home, and there is, if you compare with the previous, at the workplace, at home, the technical staff, they maintain very less COVID discipline. If you come to donning, doffing part, there was hesitancy in the initial phase and maximum faced by the nurses. And yes, it affected the routine in the way in the form of sweating, discomfort, suffocation. There was some few size issues, and the quality of PPE was also not good in the initial time. So yeah, these shortage in the daily work was reported by only very few people. So coming to the conclusion, COVID-19 generated several fears as elaborated. Fear of spread to the family was paramount in all the categories. Fear of death was least among the technicians, and there was largely adherence to the COVID discipline by all the healthcare workers. There was no significant shortage of PP was seen there. 48% had fear of vaccination. Transport issues were faced by many, and maximum was faced by the technical staffs. 59% reported infection in the self or the family. So the limitation of my study was that sample size is very small and it is a pilot study. Thank you so much. I was running very fast. Actually, the time slot was less.
May I ask something? Hello?
Please, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Neeraj, it was the topic you have selected was very good. But just a little query which I just want to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, what was your sampling technique in your study? What was your sampling technique?
I circulated the questionnaire among all healthcare workers. Actually, the figure which I denoted was the percentage of workers, not the number of workers.
Okay. So it was a total enumeration, what you are trying to say?
Sorry, ma'am, I'm not getting.
It was a total enumeration sampling.
No, ma'am. It was not enumeration. I gave this, it was circulated among all the healthcare workers. After that, actually number was not equal. As I told, 25 were doctors, 28 were the nurses, and 12 were technicians. So I concluded on behalf of the percentage which I got from those, numbers.
Okay. And what was your setting?
Neurosurgery operation theater, ma'am.
Which hospital?
GP Pant Hospital.
Okay, fine. And did you look for any other impact apart from the fear? Did you look for any other impact of COVID?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, if I look at the vaccination part, so many people had the fear of going for the vaccination. And I think if I will continue to study later on, that the vaccination part will just keep on, coming down. Now the fear is, लोगों में fear खत्म होता जा रहा है time by time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Anjali, I just have one small question to you. Like, you have mentioned about the impact, and under the social impact, social effect, you have mentioned about the practices that they were practicing things very well. So, is it a impact, or are these practices which was not your objective of your study?
Ma'am, to Neeraj or to me?
To Neeraj.
Yes, ma'am. Will you please repeat the question again?
Yeah. In your finding, in your tables, you have mentioned about the social effect. In that, you have written about fear and the practices that they were able to practice things very well. So, is it an impact regarding the practices? This is more of a practice table, the diagrams which you have shown rather than impact.
There were so many social impacts. We just tried avoiding the social gatherings. Even in the offices also, we were we were not very close friends. Means we were just keeping the distance. So this was all the impact. We had the transportation issue at that time.
Okay, thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you.
So with this, we go to the next speaker, and next we have from Safdarjung Hospital, Kanganwali Kumarasan. Okay, so over to you.
Kanakavalli Kumarasan.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kanakavalli from Safdarjung Hospital, New Delhi. So this study I have done in my MSc during MSc Nursing, July 2020. Introduction. The pressure ulcer is a localized area of tissue necrosis. Ma'am, I'm audible, ma'am?
Yes, please start.
But a screen is not shared, I think so.
Your slides are visible and you are also visible. Please continue.
So, okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Pressure ulcer is a localized area of tissue necrosis that tends to develop when soft tissue is compressed between a bony prominence and an external surface. The frequency of pressure ulcers ranges from 3% to 14% globally. The incidence of pressure ulcer in hospital has been reported to be 23% to 27.5%. Prevention of pressure ulcer is a significant nursing concern. Nurses' ability to identify the patient at risk for formation of the pressure ulcer would help to reduce the cost of treatment. Pressure ulcer not only causes suffering to the patients, but also increases the economical burden. Problem statement is a study to evaluate and compare the effectiveness of traditional back care, Kevlar back spray, and routine care in terms of prevention of decubitus ulcer in bedridden patients admitted in Safdarjung Hospital, New Delhi. My objectives are assess and evaluate the effectiveness of traditional back care, Kevlar back spray, and routine care on bedridden patients in prevention of decubitus ulcer. Compare the effectiveness of traditional back care, Kevlar back spray, and routine care on bedridden patients in prevention of decubitus ulcer. Group description: experimental group 1, those who are receiving traditional back care; experimental group 2, those who are receiving Kevlar back spray; control group, those who are receiving routine care by nursing officers. So, ma'am, next slide. Research methodology. Here, research approach, experimental research approach through experimental research design. Variables: independent variables are traditional back care, Kevlar back spray, and routine care. Dependent variable: prevention of decubitus ulcer. Settings: spinal injury ward, orthopedic ward, and a neurology ward and ICU in Safdarjung Hospital. Sample: bedridden patients admitted in spinal injury ward, orthopedic ward, neurology ward, and neuro ICU in Safdarjung Hospital. Sample size: 20 samples in each experimental group and control group. Sampling technique: randomization. Data collection tool and technique: structured interview performer related to sample characteristics. Decubitus ulcer observation scale to assess the decubitus ulcer score. Ma'am, next slide, please. Method of data collection: obtained administrative approval from the ethical committee of the Hospital, New Delhi. Informed consent was explained and a confidentiality was assured to all patients under study. Study was conducted from 17 December 2019 to 17 January 2020. Results are next slide, ma'am. Majority of samples were male. 45% were in the age group of 18 to 29 years. Majority of samples changed position for rally. Most of the samples studied 10+2. Least of the samples were previously hospitalized. Least of the samples were experienced past history of decubitus ulcer. Most of the samples were getting back care once in a day. Least of the patients were affected with other diseases. Ma'am, next slide. So here in table 1, I'm going to see the effectiveness of traditional back care in experimental group 1. For that, I calculated t-value. So computer t-value here, the computer t-value is 1.4. Which is less than table t-value at degree of freedom 19, 2.09. So here this is non-significant at 0.05 level of significance. It indicates traditional back care is effective in prevention of bed sore in decubitus ulcer on bedridden patient. In next slide, ma'am, in table 2, here I have calculated for the Kevlar back spray before and after administration of Kevlar back spray on bedridden patient. Here computer t-value is 1.54, which is less than table t-value at degree of freedom 19, 2.09. So here this is also insignificant at 0.05 level of significance. So this indicates Kevlar back spray also is effective in prevention of decubitus ulcer on bedridden patient. So next table 3, next slide, ma'am. Here the for the routine care also I calculated computer t-value. Here the computer t-value is 2.5, which is greater than table t-value is greater than computer t-value at a degree of freedom 19, 2.09. So here the value is significant at 0.05 level significance. So this indicates the routine care is not effective in prevention of decubitus ulcer on bedridden patient. And table 4, decubitus ulcer score, traditional back care. Here I compared the 3 groups: traditional back care, experimental group 1, and experimental group 2, and routine care control group. Here calculated F value is 4.49, which is greater than table F value 3.1. Here I compared the traditional back care with the experimental group 1 and Kevlar back spray experimental group 2. Here computer t-value is 0.62, which is less than table t-value at a degree of freedom 38 2.03. So this is non-significant. It indicates that both therapy, traditional back care and Kavlan back spray, are effective in prevention of decubitus ulcer on bedridden patient. Then discussion literature related to
Ma'am,
Kavlan
time
spray.
over. Time over, madam.
So, ma'am, the conclusion, I just last slide, ma'am, please. In conclusion, traditional back care and Kavlan back spray were effective in preventing bed sore on bedridden patients than routine care. Comparison of traditional back care and Kavlan back spray reveals that both therapy
But
are
ma'am, your
equally
screen not visible. Your screen not visible.
Anjali, ma'am.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, the last
Ma'am.
actually they are not able to
Anjali,
see.
please stop the Anjali, please
Time.
stop the
Time over, ma'am.
Time is over.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Okay, ma'am. So just I want to say the conclusion, the last slide,
Please
ma'am.
stop the. Please stop.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a question from you. Like, what was the routine care being provided in your setup?
Ma'am, actually, routine care, normally, mostly the routine care will be given by nursing officer. That is just the first time they will explain to the caregiver how to change the position and
So no back care
take a
is
back
not
care.
provided in the routine care.
Care is, yes, ma'am, because of the overstrength, because staff nurse are 1 or 2, the patient will be 55, 60 in orthopedic ward and all.
Okay.
So
Even the relatives were not providing the back care.
relative, they will explain whether they are giving or not. That is according to the, if the caregiver is good, then it will be okay.
So-
Otherwise,
So
the
then
chances for getting back bed sore is.
So then comparison of traditional back care and with the routine care has no meaning.
I
Some of them-
agree. Yeah, I agree with Shashi ma'am, because then control
Yes.
group is not comparable if they are not getting
Yes.
routine care also. It's not comparable. I agree with ma'am.
Yeah, I also agree. They should have. You should have made a structured backyard regime, traditional backyard regime actually, so that you can compare. I agree with both.
Actually,
judges.
the
The Gangavali.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, please say.
Yes, ma'am.
Please say.
Ma'am, actually in traditional back care, I have given the back care, but in routine care, so, I don't know whether give or not.
So again, for
maximum
that,
the nursing,
for
Yes,
that
ma'am.
only I'm saying that already it is an established fact that traditional back care is an effective method in preventing decubitus ulcer.
Yes, ma'am. But I compared actually recently in subducting we are using the Kavlan spray. So in spinal injury patient, they are long-term bedridden patient. They cannot
Okay.
afford for the long time the Kavlan spray. That's why I want to prove again that equal to the my conclusion is the traditional back care is effective with the Kavlan spray. So they can use in home also long-term bedridden patient mainly for.
Okay. And how did you randomize your samples? What was your method?
Ma'am, randomization, lottery method. Ma'am. I took because I in neurology I have divided. If I took 20 sample means 10 samples from spinal injury, 10 samples from neurology. So
Okay.
I selected 3 what from spinal injury and neurology.
So
3
that
what.
is not randomization.
You made any table for randomization? How many you selected for control group, experimental group? How many for?
No, ma'am. Just I put the lottery and took.
No,
this
that is.
3 what I selected for 10 sample. Then I put lottery method. Ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions?
No, no.
Questions, but just I inform you as a coordinator, this platform is especially for the clinical nurses. They get the real data from the clinical sites, either wards and ICUs and OTs. This guys is presenting a MSc topic, thesis topic. So I have to request to all participants, you should be prepare the data and research paper, taking a real practice from the bedside nursing or ICU, working in ICU and
Ma'am,
Yeah,
Ma'am, I am working in Safdarjung Hospital in
I
spinal
agree,
injury
I
ward.
agree.
That's why it occurred.
I agree. I
Yes, ma'am.
agree. But
No, no.
you have to present the amnesty. Agree?
Okay.
But ma'am,
Just I mean,
but ma'am, she has also collected the data from the hospital and from the patients only.
I
So that
agree,
is
madam.
That's
so
okay,
that is
fine.
acceptable.
But madam, actually, clinical nurses not taking an interest for the presentations. Have you seen so many? Last, I think I have a good experience. So nurses
Binu ma'am,
not,
she is a clinical nurse only, ma'am. Binu
I
ma'am.
know she is a
Binu ma'am,
clinical
yeah.
nurse.
So
I
Okay,
know.
we
I
proceed
think
with the
she's a-
third one because without
Yes,
wasting
yes.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our next speaker is Miss Sweetie from AIMS, and she's presenting a quality improvement study. So over to you, Sweetie.
So my topic is, it is a quality improvement project, and the statement is a quality improvement initiative for reducing the number of central line associated bloodstream infections among patients admitted in neurosurgery ICUC, Neuroscience Center, AIMS, New Delhi. So about the introduction of the study, of all the healthcare associated infections, CLEPSIs are preventable infections with effective use of aseptic techniques, timely surveillance, and prompt management strategies. The CLEPSIs can lead to prolonged hospital stay among neurosurgical patients, which accounts for increased morbidity and mortality along with increased healthcare cost. So about the need of the study, we collect a report from the infection control department of our hospital, and the patients presented with a positive tip culture of central venous catheter. Apart from the positive tip culture, we also observed that the prolonged fever is the most common complication seen in the neurosurgical patients, and the prolonged fever is attributed to presence of invasive lines, use of central venous catheter for prolonged duration, and prolonged mechanical ventilation. So there is a need for QI study to maintain sterility and compliance to central venous care in routine practice. And the reason for selection of statement, the patients undergoing neurosurgical procedures, they bounded with invasive lines and drains like extraventricular drain, Romovac drain, and lumbar drain, etc. And the CLEPSIs predispose these patients to surgery-associated complications with presence of these invasive lines and drains. Due to these, hospital stay of patient and the outcome of surgery will get affected. So to shorten the hospital stay and to improve the outcome of surgery, there is a need to reduce the occurrence of central line associated bloodstream infections. So the smart aim for the project is to improve the compliance to aseptic central line care and maintenance bundle from 48.9% to 80% over a period of 8 weeks in neurosurgery ICUC. So a QI team was formed, which include 9 members, and the roles and responsibilities were delegated to each and every member. After formation of team, we made a problem analysis tool to find out the baseline status of the problem. So we formed an observational checklist, and this checklist contained 14 items, and with these items, we calculated the baseline status of central venous line care in the neurosurgery ICUC. When we collected the baseline status, we take 5 samples in different days, and the data was analyzed and mean score was obtained and plotted on a graph. So in the mean line data, we also plotted the baseline data of positive tip culture that is being collected from infection control department, and the other data is that is collected by the observational checklist. After that, we made a problem analysis tool, and we formulated a fishbone analysis. In the fishbone analysis, we divided our problem, that is non-compliance to aseptic handling of central venous catheter, into 4 main compartments that belongs from person, policy, environment, and the product. In the person compartment, there is a lack of knowledge, lack of appreciation, and lack of observational and practical skills. In the policy part, there is a lack of standardized guidelines, lack of supervision, and no regular classes and procedures. In the environment, there is a lack of defined area to prepare articles, no technique chart displayed, not able to create style field. And in the product part, insufficient supply of material and unavailability of transducers. So the main causes were lack of knowledge among nursing officer, unavailability of lack of sterility while handling CVC, and lack of supervision. So after formulation of the main causes, we start our testing ideas, and the first change idea was sensitization of healthcare personnel on aseptic handling of central venous line. In this, we create awareness among the healthcare personnel, and we provide regular reminders in the form of posters and text to WhatsApp group of healthcare personnel of neurosurgery ICUC. After that, we overtly observed the nursing officers while doing CVC care, and the baseline median compliance was improved from 48.9 to 55.2%. The first PDSA was adopted, and we moved towards second change. In the second change idea, the demonstration of central venous line care procedure was given in the planning part, and in doing part we give demonstration to each and every nursing officer, and in return we take written demonstration. Apart from that, we provide all the needed articles. By second change idea, the baseline median compliance was improved from 55.2 to 63%. The second change idea was adopted, and we planned for third change. In the third, we formulate a booklet on the aseptic central line care. This booklet was validated by the Department of Anesthesia and the senior nursing officers. We kept this booklet in the ICU for references and clarification, and overt and covert observations was done. So after this idea, the baseline compliance was scored improved from 63.4 to 71.6%. The third change idea was also adopted, and we moved towards sustenance phase. So we plot a chart. In this, we plotted the different median that was collected during first change idea, second change idea, third change idea, and in the sustenance phase. Also, we plotted the data collected from infection control department, which also reduced over a period of time. So in the sustenance phase, this was for the 8 weeks, and we take 3 samples per week for total 8 weeks. And the median compliance of aseptic central line is 73.4% during the sustenance phase. So it is possible to do compliance with aseptic central line care and maintenance bundle, and therefore reducing the number of CLABSIs by adhering to guidelines and close supervision. The baseline median compliance to central venous line care was improved from 48.9 to 73.4%, and the sustainability depends on continued data surveillance and timely feedback to staff. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sweetie, for a wonderful presentation and a very impactful QI project. And my only concern is you have talked about sustenance stage at the last. So I have seen only the measurement part of the sustenance stage, wherein you have said you have kept collecting data, which is very important. Otherwise, you won't be able to prove, right? Now, my question is, what other things you have done? Like for the change ideas, you have said all adopted. It should be adapted, because partially you are adopting and then going for another change idea. Okay, if only one change idea is sufficient for the improvement, then you should say adopt it. That is okay. So sustenance may, what all you did about the third change idea booklet, is it now final and it is used in the ICU?
Ma'am, the booklet is being and about to launch, but we kept a copy of that booklet in the ICU for reference purposes for all the nursing officers. So the
okay,
booklet
perfect.
is in the ICU.
Okay, perfect. So everyone is using. And do you have any future plan of scaling up this project in other ICUs? Because
Yes.
it is very nice, and the infection control people will be very happy to see the results.
Yes, ma'am, definitely, because central venous catheterization is a common procedure, and it is being used in everywhere, so we can adopt this manually in everywhere. Yes.
Thank you so much. Over from me.
Excuse me, Sweetie. It was a very good presentation.
Okay, ma'am.
Just a little query, that in which shift the data was collected for the compliance? Was it in the morning only, or it was in the
Ma'am, in
evening or
every
night
shift?
also?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, data was collected except in 9 shift. The data was collected in morning shift as well as in evening shift. So the team members collected in both shifts. They take demonstration and written demonstration during the morning shift as well as in the evening shift. And the observations like covert observations, data, ma'am, completely collected during the both shift except in the night shift.
So subjects were not aware that they are being observed using a checklist?
Ma'am, during the baseline time, they were not aware, but after that, they were all aware.
So I think if they know it that they are being observed, they will definitely show the better compliance.
But ma'am, we want a change. Firstly, we want to see the baseline status. At that time, they were not aware about that the QI is going on. After checking the baseline status, we made them aware that a QI product is going on there, and we make them aware about every change idea so that we can achieve our aim. So they were all aware, ma'am.
But I think in sustenance, we should see, they should not be aware that they are being observed. Only then we can see whether they're really following or not. Am I right? Am I right, Olma ma'am?
Very true. I agree with Seema.
So,
adopted that result. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
yes,
Ma'am,
please go on.
Ma'am, in the sustenance phase, all of were them fully aware about the procedure, and I think they were know the routine. So,
Just one question. You have talked about in the sustenance stage, you have talked about something feedback. वो क्या था?
sorry, ma'am.
You have talked about the measurement and feedback also, na?
Okay, ma'am.
How did
I
you do
was
that?
just trying to say that we can only maintain sustain if we get regular, ma'am, by conversation only. By conversation to staff members, by taking feedback, and ma'am, also we got report from infection control department. So.
Okay, sweetie, a last question from you. Like you have tried to take up a quality improvement initiative for reducing the number of central line associated bloodstream infections.
Yes,
So, is the number quite high that you have to take up this study?
Ma'am, when we got a positive tip culture from that infection control department, so this was a concern for us. So we take this initiative apart. So that's why we took this topic, ma'am.
But this policy is as per CDC guidelines.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is there mandatory in all the setups.
Ma'am,
what made you take up a quality improvement initiative? If all and already like there are some, it is like central line care and all. Everybody is supposed to practice thoroughly.
Ma'am, everybody is supposed to practice, but there was no practice. That's why we got a positive tip culture, and there was no prepared guidelines according to our area. So we make amendments.
See, we have
guidelines
international standard guidelines.
As per CDC, we also made changes according.
We have internationally acceptable standard guidelines, which we are all supposed to follow in all areas.
Yes, sweetie, Shashi ma'am is very much right. You could have modified your aim as to improve the compliance to this care, like that. So you could have changed that a problem statement जो है ना आप उसको different way में वो कर सकते हो apart from like the one you have used ना आपने use किया to reduce the number of CLABSI among patients admitted. Instead of that, you could have just done to improve the compliance to central line care by the nurses, like that.
That's okay.
Otherwise,
it's over now.
Yes.
It was a good job. Good
Thank
work.
you.
Yeah. So can we go ahead with the next presenter, Anjali?
Yes, ma'am, please carry on.
Yes. Okay, so next I'll invite Rekha Pradhan from AIMS. She also is having a QI project on surgical scrubbing technique. Rekha, please, screen is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Rekha Pradhan, Senior Nursing Officer in Neurosurgical Operation Theatre, AIMS, New Delhi. Today I am going to present my topic.
Please carry on. Rekha ma'am, please carry on.
Is it audible or not?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please start.
Today I am going to present my topic, improving the compliance of surgical scrubbing technique among nursing officer in NSOT under quality improvement project. As we all know that surgical scrubbing is an important procedure to reduce the risk of contamination by microorganisms during operative procedures. A surgical hand scrub shall be performed before donning and gloving pre-operatively by all personnel performing or assisting with surgical procedures to remove debris and transient microorganisms from the nails, hands, and forearms. The basic principle of the scrub is to wash the hands thoroughly and then to wash from a clean area, that is the hand, to a lesser clean area, the arm, using proper technique to minimize the infection. There are many problems in each area we want to improve, but all we can't do at one time. So to identify the problem, what should be solved, we have used prioritization metrics to prioritize the problem, but which under that prioritization matrix, there are 4 components, and the score has been given to according to that. We have listed all our problems in that prioritization matrix, and we found that which problems has got the maximum score, so we choose that problem first. That and that score has been given according to whether it is important for the patient outcome, or whether it is affordable for all the team members, and according to the time and resource also, and is it under the control of team members, and whether it is easy to measure or not, because the difficult problems we can't take at the first as a first project. So here we find the problem, that is non-compliance of surgical scrubbing technique, which has got the maximum score. To get the baseline data, we have created a checklist that is the sample size, and then the pre-wash, just to wash the hand thoroughly. Then first wash, that is above the 3 inch above the elbow, and second wash up to the mid arm, and then rinsing, that is there should not be a backflow from elbow to the hand, and a wiping should be done in a single stroke. We have used Poke model for the to get the baseline data. The method of testing was the direct observation in morning shift, first case, and 5% has taken enough for the order. Then we have collected the baseline data from 25th May to the 24th May for 1 week, for 5 days, and that was the outcome was that it was 40% of that the compliance of the nursing officer to the surgical scrubbing technique. So our aim statement was that is to improve the compliance of surgical scrubbing technique among nursing officer in NSOT from 40% to 70% within a period of 2 months, that we have started from the 20th May of 2019. In aim statement, it should be clear that what we want to improve and how much percentage from the existing percentage, and within a limitation of period also it should be done. The root cause analysis done by using fishbowl analysis. Here our problem is poor compliance in surgical scrubbing technique, and there are 4 components. The first component is personal, where there maybe the people having the knowledge, lack of knowledge. There are standard protocols, but they are not taking interest, and it can be due to the emergency situation when some for the sake of the patient life we are doing, and we are not bothering about the proper technique of the scrubbing. And some people are rigid to change themselves, so they don't take interest in to change themselves, and they just go wash and go for assisting. Under the policy, there are policies and
time up.
Time? No. And place, no time displayed, or technique chart displayed, lack of supervision, lack of procedure. Testing change ideas applied. The first change idea was STP, structured teaching program with demonstration. The second change idea was scrubbing technique poster displayed. The third change ideas was digital clock fixed above the scrubbing station. Fourth change idea was constant supervision by ANS. And the fifth change idea was SOP was formulated for the uniform procedure and to maintain the sustenance. This is the display. And the results we got, that in by putting the data in Excel sheet, and then the run chart was formulated, and here we got the result that in every change idea we have got the markedly improvement in the scrubbing technique. So at the sustenance we have got the 80% improving in the surgical scrubbing technique. For the sustaining improvement, we have done the indirect observation as STP program on scrubbing technique and the continuous supervision. To conclude my topic, I'll say compliance to the surgical scrub among nursing officers have markedly increased following the adoption of change ideas. It helped the staff to understand the importance of standard method of surgical scrubbing. Sustainable.
Okay, Rekha, we stop here. Rekha, we stop here.
Okay.
So there is one question from me, Rekha.
Yes.
In your third change idea, you said that in the scrubbing room you have put up a clock, digital clock, right? So what was the purpose of that? Like, were you working for the scrubbing time as well?
No, ma'am, we are not working for the scrubbing tank, but it is for the person. So actually, if the person follow the proper technique, the time automatically will be covered. So for the sake of that, the person will automatically do the proper technique.
So why this change idea? The digital clock was one of your change idea, no? Any particular reason? You must be having some this suggestion from your team. That's why you must have done this third change idea, na? So what was that? I'm just curious.
No. And actually, we have discussed with our mentors, Dr. Amol. They said the digital clock should be also there, so that the person, at least by looking at that, they will take some time to do the proper technique also.
Okay. Very good and very difficult project, though. Hand hygiene is a big difficult project as per my experience for IQI. Congratulations for that, Rekha.
And ma'am, this is only for the nursing persons, and we are planning to do on the surgeons also. We have taken the
sure.
But
okay.
It was observed only on nurses.
Yes.
Yes.
Initially, yes.
Initially, we have done on the nursing officers. After that, we are planning to do on the doctors also.
Okay, and it was observed in morning shift only in the first.
Yes, ma'am. In the morning shift, first case 5%.
So you need to first scale up in your area, then only you can go with any other care workers.
Yes, ma'am, because there is a ego. Ma'am, we have to improve ourselves, then only we can move towards.
Yes, I mean evening shift and night shift also you have to cover. Then only you can go with others.
Others, yes.
Okay, Rekha, just one simple question. Like your aim was to increase the compliance, improving the compliance, and then you achieved from 40% to 80%.
Yes.
Why were you not able to achieve up to 100%?
To see the chart, there are sometimes we have reached to the 100% also, but at once we can't we put our target on the 100, so our target was 70%, but
this is a very basic and a very important skill where your compliance should have been 100%, and in most of the skills we should have 100% compliance.
Yes,
it is not knowledge that we can stop at 80%. It is a skill, and which is a very important skill for OT scrubbing, for a surgical scrubbing, and here your target should have been 100%.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Rekha, in which PDSA you had the maximum compliance? In which PDSA? Was it in digital clock?
No. Actually,
maybe the poster.
First.
Can you show that slide?
Just a minute.
Okay, with this poster.
Yes, this slide.
Ma'am, see, in the first change idea, that is SOP and demonstration, we have seen that markedly change here. We have reached within 2 weeks up to 60.
I got it.
Then scrubbing, digital clock
and supervision.
And during the supervision, it came down also, because all the seniors, sometimes they have lots of work also. So then, but slowly we have raised the.
Achieved it again.
Okay, so due to the time constraint, I think we should.
Will we move to the next?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you, Rekha. Thank you, Rekha. So next I call upon Jayanti to present on seizure-related physical injuries done in South India.
My topic is seizure-related physical injury. I am Jayanti, working as a clinical instructor in College of Nursing, Nimans, and none to declare among the authors. Conflict of interest. My statement of problem is seizure-related physical injuries among adults attending clinical in a tertiary level hospital of South India. An introduction: epilepsy is the world's most common neurological disorder. Approximately 70 million people worldwide, most of them hail from developing countries like India. Epilepsy is a disease characterized by seizure due to an excessive or synchronous neuronal activity in the brain. Seizure characteristics make people more prone to physical injury. And background: nearly 12 million persons with epilepsy live in India. In Bangalore, our institute conducted an epidemiological survey and reported a prevalence rate of 8.8 per thousand population. It's observed. Even though the epilepsy burden is more in the community in India, they are also living in the community. Most times we are giving injury and accident to the general population, and we will not bother about the epilepsy community peoples. So there is a very few data from India on accidents and physical injuries among people with epilepsy. That's why that is the purpose of this study, to conduct my objective is to estimate the prevalence of seizure-related physical injuries among people with seizure disorders, and to find out the association between the occurrence of seizure among seizure-related physical injuries among people with seizure disorder, and with the demographic variables. And methodology: my research approach is quantitative research approach, and it's an institutional based cross-sectional study conducted at Tertiary Care Hospital, Bangalore. And the participants are 300 adult patients attending the epilepsy clinic of the hospital. Sampling technique: we have adopted a convenient sampling technique. Inclusion criteria: adult patients with a confirmed clinical diagnosis of seizure disorders were included, and seizure of different spectrum disorders included in the study. And exclusion criteria: patients having severe depression, mental retardation, or dementia were excluded, and patients who were not willing to participate in the studies were also excluded. And tools: the tool had two sections. Section A, socio-demographic data, included 8 items, and Section B, structured questionnaire prepared by the investigators after thorough literature review, and it consisted of 10 items exploring the nature and types of injury. Data were collected by interviewing method. And ethical consideration: the study proposal was approved by the Ethical Review Board of Nimans, and we have taken the written informed consent from the patient, and the privacy was ensured during the data collection, and confidentiality also maintained. Data analysis were carried out using 22, and descriptive and inferential statistics was used for the analysis. And the table 1 shows the socio-demographic characteristics. 41% of them belong to the 21 to 30 years of population, and 14% belongs to 18 to 20 years. And in this, we can see that the most productive age group of 21 to 30 years are having the epilepsy. And the gender we can see, and 54% of them are represented male, and 46% of them belongs to female. And in the occupational, professional, 2% of them are from the professional. Of them are professional, and 57.3% are unemployed due to the polytherapy, drugs, and drowsiness. They can't able to go for the work also. This is we have highlighted in this study. The place of seizure attack, 80% of them are reported that they had the seizure attack at home, and 15.7% have reported that they had seizure attack at workplace. And the objective 1, it's to estimate the prevalence of seizure-related physical injuries among epilepsy. This figure shows among 300 patients, majority 66.3%, that is 199%, have one or the other forms of physical injuries, and 33.7% of them, they doesn't have any type of physical injuries. And the figure 4, distribution of injuries in among 199 members, 7% expressed that they had soft tissue injuries. The soft tissue injuries include tongue bite, lip bites, abrasions, all that. And no injury, 34% of them they have not experienced no injuries. And fracture, 3% of them are experienced fracture, 1% of them are experienced accident. Burns, 28%, and head injury, 11% of them have experienced head injury. And the objective 2, association between the occurrence of seizure-related physical injury and the socio-demographic variables. In this association between the socio-demographic variables with the seizure-related physical among age, gender, and occupation, there is no specific significance found in this study. Association we have not found in this study. And the association between clinical variables of seizure-related physical among
Time over, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. And association between perceived social support, 70.5% of them received social support. And the discussion, Sapna et al. Conducted 2007 in Tertiary Care Hospital in South India, reported that 44.8% experienced injury. In contrast, in our study, it is 66.3% of our study. Both cohort studies were comparable in socio-demographic variables. Institutional-based studies from other countries, Iran, it is seizure type generalized 38.6%. And
Jayanti, go to your conclusion. Jayanti, go to your conclusion.
Yes, limitations.
Just go to your conclusion.
Seizure-related physical injuries are very common in adult patients, and soft tissue injuries are the most common. Caregivers' education related to ictal care is highly imperative for prevention of seizure-related injuries, ma'am. And that living safely.
We'll stop here. We'll stop here, Jayanti. Jayanti, we'll stop here. Okay. So, Jayanti, I have a question. Like, you have mentioned that the prevalence of physical injuries is quite high, right? But it is just the percentage which you have mentioned. Prevalence should be calculated as confidence interval.
We have
percentage. Any percentage doesn't denote the prevalence.
Some odds ratio also can be given
Yes.
in prevalence study. And one more thing I want to ask, you have taken the samples, were they follow-up patients, the one who were coming to epilepsy clinic?
No, we are.
Or they were newly diagnosed patients?
They are diagnosed as epilepsy patient, ma'am.
Newly diagnosed or with a follow-up patient?
Diagnosed with epilepsy patients.
Since when? Since when diagnosed?
The inclusion criteria is above 18 years with a history of.
So, and anyway, since you have calculated prevalence, it includes both new and old cases. The prevalence word itself says that it includes both new and old.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But in the study, we have found that above 15 years of epilepsy conditions, they have reported more, ma'am, with the physical injuries.
And with what have you found the association of these physical injuries? Was there any significant?
There is no specific association, but the GTCS patient.
Okay.
It's significant, ma'am. Guys.
Okay. Any questions from Dolma, ma'am?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then we proceed
can we
to the
go
next.
ahead with?
Yes.
Thank you, Jayanti. So next, I'll call upon Jyoti Mani, having a presentation on stroke knowledge, factor and intention for behavioral change.
Topic of my study is stroke knowledge, risk factors and intention for behavioral change in general population. Introduction: non-communicable diseases are the major challenges in public health in the 21st century. It contributes approximately 41 million deaths worldwide every year, mainly in the younger population between 30 to 50 years. In India, nearly 5.8 million individuals will die from NCDs such as heart. Digital status report on non-communicable NCDs 2010. Statement of problem is stroke knowledge, risk factors and intention for behavioral change in general population in the primary health center in rural Bangalore. Objectives are to explore the knowledge, risk factors and intention for behavioral change about stroke among general population. It's a cross-sectional study conducted in primary health center in rural Bangalore. Methodology, it's a descriptive design was used. Primary health center was the setting, and the persons attending primary health center for their various health problems were populations, and the persons with both genders seeking medical consultation in PHC. The sample size was 148 with convenient sampling method. Inclusion criteria were subjects who were willing to participate and age group between 18 to 65, and subjects with psychiatric disorders were excluded. Tools were socio-demographic schedule and as well as a stroke awareness questionnaire. which is consisting of 26 items, which has subscales of 3, knowledge 8 items, and risk factors 5 items, intention for behavioral change around 13 items. The tools scores are 0 to 8 for knowledge, 5 to 20 for risk factors, and intention for behavioral change is 13 to 52. The study observed that there is a lower score indicates lower level, the tool indicates that lower level knowledge, the lower scores, and lower level intention for behavioral change. Ethical approval for the study was conducted from ethical committee, medical officer from PHC, and confidentiality and anonymity was maintained. Data collection was done during the December 2019 to January 2020, and we have given information about the study and clarified their doubts. The participants who have given the informed consent were included for the study, and the data were analyzed by SPSS and descriptive inference statistics were calculated. We have done a comparison of mean differences between means differences were calculated by using t-test ANOVA with the statistical significance of P 0.05, Pearson correlation coefficient, risk factors, and intentional behavioral change scores. 175 questionnaires were distributed and 145 were accepted with a response rate of 84.57. The results, it says about 67.6% were females and belongs to Hindu religion and studied up to school level, and they were majority of them married, and most of them were consuming non-vegetarian diet. This is the same statistics in the pie chart. And coming to the results of medical profile, a history of smoking were around 17.6%, history of family history of stroke was around 16.2, and history of hypertension was 27.0, and history of diabetes was 14.9. Their BMIs were 23.63 plus or minus 4.64. The knowledge, risk factors, and intention of behavioral change shows that they were having a moderate level of knowledge and perceived risk factors and intention for behavioral change. The mean difference between genders, there is no significant was found between males and females with non-vegetarian and vegetarian. And coming to the history of smoking also, there is no significant difference found between the smokers and non-smokers. And coming to the history of stroke, there is a significant difference was found between the family history of stroke and the family history of no stroke with knowledge level and perceived risk factors. And coming to the history of hypertension, there was a significance between knowledge level and the hypertensive patients. And the family history of diabetes, there is no significance as found between non-diabetic and diabetic patients. Correlation, there was an age with risk factors and intention of behavioral change was negatively correlated. As the age increases, the perceived risk factors were low, and intention to behavioral change also it indicates low. And association or the comparison between other socio-demographic variables, there is no significant association was found between these risk factors knowledge with gender and education. Discussion, the present study showed that moderate level of public knowledge on risk factors and intention for behavioral change. The similar findings were observed between Segura et al. 2003 and Colley and Hickey 2018 are also identified moderate level of knowledge with risk factors. The history of hypertension, diabetes, and increased BMI were identified as important risk factors for stroke. Implications for practice, community-based education strategies should be planned through primary health centers. Awareness programs primarily through mass media can provide powerful response to focus on larger group. Limitations, since it is a sample size small and then there is a female-male gender differences, so that generalization to be taken with caution and self-reporting bias. Conclusion, we have to improve knowledge of stroke and change of intention for behavior in individuals helps to practice adequate stroke prevention strategies, thereby reducing burden of stroke in families. Thus, the continued and intensified emotional by policymakers, health professionals, and local organizations. These are my references. Thank you.
Yes, Jyotimani, it is a good area which you have studied. I just have I don't know, I did not understand maybe. Have you assessed the risk factors, the knowledge regarding the risk factors, or have you
knowledge regarding stroke and risk factors for stroke and intention for behavioral change?
Okay, so these risk factors for stroke, have you assessed the presence of risk factors among the general public?
Ma'am, perceived risk factors.
So how were your questions like?
Their questions were like whether the stroke, the higher BP is the risk factor for being a person to get stroke, or cholesterol levels are increased levels, or
so BMI, it was a knowledge only, na?
These kind of factors, if it is.
It was a knowledge of risk factor
only. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Risk factors.
And how did you assess the intention for behavior change?
Actually, the questions were concentrating about the healthy lifestyle and their food, eating habits, or the a healthy food or healthy diet, and then
So
exercises.
this is a
These
normal
intentions,
psychology.
they
Everybody
have
will
to-
agree to change.
Ma'am, the questioners were having like that, so I assessed based on that only.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Somewhere the objectives are not met. This is what I think.
Yes, yes. So we move on to the next presenter. Seema.
So the next presenter is Ms. Shamla, and she will talk about knowledge and attitude toward prevention of traumatic brain injury among industrial training students. So over to you, Ms. Shamla.
Okay, road accidents cause a serious impact on human development in most developing countries. In developing countries like India, accidents contribute to social and economic problems. India faces many road safety issues like increase of motor vehicles, lack of traffic safety regulations, poor quality of roads and vehicles, and inadequate public health infrastructures. Something is not moving. Yeah. Background: traumatic brain injury is recognized as a global health priority as it is the leading cause of death and disability among young worldwide. India has recorded the most number of deaths from the road traffic accidents than any other countries in the world. Objective: assess the knowledge, attitude, and practice towards prevention of traumatic brain injuries among industrial training students in Bangalore. And methodology, the statement is already read. Population: students of Industrial Training Institute, study design, cross-sectional descriptive survey. Sample size is 451. And then sampling method is purposive. Setting of the study is Industrial Training Institute. Study criteria: the students studying in Industrial Training Institute. Description of the tools: socio-demographic profile includes age, gender, religion, and ready to help accident victim and experience of head injury. And part B is self-administrative questionnaire developed by the Neurology and Neurosurgery Multidisciplinary Academic League of the medical course at the University of Domain, Attitude Domain, and Practice Domain. And data collection procedure is data collection carried out in the month of March 2020. Obtain consent from the subjects. Administer self-report questionnaire. Ethical consideration: Institute Ethical Committee clearance was obtained. Permission obtained from the principal of Industrial Training Institute. Students were explained briefly about the aims and objectives of the study. Written informed consent were obtained from the students. The analysis, descriptive statistical analysis was done by using SPS Statistics 22. And here, this is the this table depicts on demographic and baseline characteristic of the sample. That is, majority of the students were in 18 years of age, and most of the students were male, and majority belongs to the Hindu religion. And majority of the students said that they don't have any past history of any head injury. And this pie chart depicts the knowledge regarding the prevention of traumatic brain injury. That is 75.8% were had a above median. So it shows that they had adequate knowledge regarding the prevention of traumatic brain injury. And this table depicts the attitudes regarding traumatic TBI prevention among industrial training students. That is, majority of the students, they said that they will never drive after drinking alcoholic beverages. And majority of the students said that they never ride with a drunk driver. And majority of the students said that they need to check the depth of the swimming pool before dipping or diving. And majority of the students said that it is very important to use the seat belt when they are driving the car. And majority of the students said that importance of using protective gear while riding the bike or skating board. And here this table presents practice regarding traumatic TBI prevention among industrial training students. Here, willingness to help a person who met with an accident, majority of them said yes. And practice of wearing helmet as a pillion rider or as driver, majority of them said that always they want to wear, always we have to wear. And practice of wearing seat belt, majority of them they said always they advise to wear the seat belt. And practice of riding with a drunk driver, majority of them said that they never ride the this one. And this pie chart depicts that reason for not attending the trauma case on the road, because nowadays we are seeing more. And here majority of the students, they said because of the fear of legal consequences, they are not attending any trauma cases if they find on the roadside. And this bar chart depicts repeats that immediate measures of the head injury. They said that immediately when they see any accident victims on the road, they will call the ambulance. And discussion study results shows that the student had adequate knowledge regarding the use of safety measures. The present study results are in the concordance with the study conducted by the Erda Ali, and the positive attitude and the level of practice were adequate among most of the students, which was associated with their high knowledge. This study results were also supported by the study conducted on the high school students. Conclusion: student had adequate knowledge on prevention of TBI and positive attitude towards prevention of TBI. And limitations of the study, it was a self-report bias might be there. Only industrial training students were included for the study. Majority of the subjects were males. And recommendation: the study can be generalized and replicated in a large sample for making a more valid generalization. The study may be conducted in the high school and the other colleges. And an effort should be taken by the education and police department to educate the student regarding use of safety measures in prevention of accidents. Thank you.
So good study, Shamla, and even the practices which you have shown by the students, they are also like, since they are self-reported, they have reported very good practices, isn't it? And regarding the attitude, what is your major finding regarding the attitude?
Means they like to wear seat belt, and they like to, even though many of the teenagers we have seen that while they ride the bike they may not wear the helmet, but in this questionnaire they have given the answer that they like to wear the helmet. And
so that is related to the practice. I'm asking about the attitude.
Attitude that they are willing to help the
Needy.
victim.
Okay.
Needy patients.
Mm-hmm. But in the knowledge, did you not have a question related to the legal consequences? Because nowadays helping anybody is has become safe. Nobody is going to question you.
No, we are just had in a socio-demographic this thing, just whether they want to help, and I given the options why they are not helping.
No.
If no, other than that, I did not have any questions, madam, related to legal consequences.
So because in your results you have mentioned that the fear of legal consequences
Fear
was
of
a major
legal.
reason for denying help.
Yeah.
So nowadays it is
Yes,
legal.
ma'am.
Helping others is legal
Yeah, now government has made a rule
so
that
maybe
if they
those
help,
students are not knowing
they may
about
not face any legal consequences. Yeah.
Any questions from Seema?
Nothing, ma'am. Nothing. Can we move to the next one?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rekha Joshi, and I'm going to talk about virtual meeting and its acceptance by neuro nurses. As we all know, humans are social species. We are used to being able to see body languages and being able to connect with someone in person. During this COVID pandemic, academics and teaching has been affected drastically for known reasons. The speed and reach of COVID-19 pandemic has forced rapid changes in how we conduct medical practices and researches. This resulted in drastic decline in teaching and training. Hence, virtual meeting emerges as an alternative methodology when massive annual conferences and small society meetings have moved online. The new format poses numerous technical and organizational challenges, but it also offers opportunities for reaching wider audience, reducing the carbon footprint of meeting travel, and improving diversity and equity. The aim and objective of my study is to find out acceptance of virtual meeting among neuro nurses in GB Pant Hospital. For this, I have conducted a pilot study. A questionnaire got circulated among OT, ICU, and ward neuro nurses. This is my questionnaire, which I have prepared. So I have circulated this among 40 nurses, among which I have got only 28 nurses back to me, and 12 never attended virtual meeting. Hence, I have excluded them. So now I will talk about only total 28 nurses. Only the percentage was 100%. Okay, ma'am. So 100% of people attended the virtual meetings, among which 80% said that they did not adjust any duty hour for the meeting, and 50% of nurses were said that the content was fruitful, informative for them. 40% said that they did not found the information fruitful, and 10% nurses said that they could not say anything about it. And 50% of nurses were very much comfortable with the network and the way the organizing committee organized that virtual meeting. 45% of nurses were facing the network issue, and 5% could not say anything about it. So the sole reason of attending the virtual meeting was for a credit hour and gaining some knowledge, which in case of 80% nurses, and the 20% of nurses simply said they attended the conference only for credit hour. When I asked the question, what was the missing in virtual meetings? So 90% of nurses said they missed the fun of travel and togetherness. And 75% of nurses said they missed the souvenir, whereas 45% nurses said they were missing the informative conference stall. Among the 28 nurses, only one nurse presented PPT in the virtual meeting. And approximately 95% of nurses said they will not accept virtual meeting over physical meeting. So in conclusion, I just want to say that medical communities has relied heavily on conferences, symposium, and other live meeting to share new scientific information and to engage with each other. Personal face-to-face connections are the foundation of human society, and interacting with others is how we learn and build relationships. Till some extent, we have understood that virtual meeting are the need of hour, and however, a majority of nurses still not accepted it, and they simply said that they have attended the virtual meetings just for getting the credit hour so that they can go for the DNC registration. And when they got the relatable knowledge, so it was the cherry on the top for them. However, I have found that physical meeting not only provide us recent information, and it help in upgradation of our knowledge, but it also give us great opportunity to break the monotony of professional life by traveling, by exploring that city, by knowing the culture of that city, by making new acquaintances and the beautiful memories of that time, which I believe everyone is missing nowadays. Thank you so much.
Rekha, my suggestion to you is, as it was a very small sample size, so don't give the conclusion in the percentage, because that is something not valid. Your sample size is just 28, right? Don't
Yes,
give the
ma'am.
conclusion in the percentage. We can't say 90% because that is something not fair. You have to give the exact number. These many persons
People.
are not, yeah, that should be there in the conclusion.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Rekha. We'll move on.
Yeah, we'll move to the last one. The last presenter is Ms. Ritu, and she will talk about the role of sterilization during COVID pandemic.
Madam, sterilization is an important aspect of neurosurgical operation theatre. Sterilization refer to any process that removes, kills, or deactivates all microorganisms. There are various ways of sterilization practiced across the world. The classification of method of sterilization are physical, chemical, and mechanical. Physical are further classified as sunlight, moist heat, ultrasonic radiation, dry heat. Chemical gaseous and liquid agents. Liquid agents are further classified: alcohol, halogens, phenol, aldehydes. Gases are ethylene, ozone, nitroxides, formaldehydes. Mechanical method includes particular air filter, particle filter, microbial filter. The role of sterilization become more important during COVID time. Aim of my study is to analyze sterilization practice in OT in last 1 year. Material and method. Method of sterilization is assessed by logbook, which we maintain, a regular logbook which we maintain in our OT. OT protocol, what we follow in our OT is all patients with COVID-19 negative RT-PCR are taken for OT. Patient is operated and shifted. After that, OT is vacated for half an hour. Instruments are dipped with the help of rollers in multi-enzyme for half an hour. After half an hour, cleaning of OT is done with 1% hypochlorite solution. Carbolization of OT is done with Virkon or chlorohexidine or 70% of alcohol, which consists sanitizer, which consists of 7 alcohol. This process takes about 15 minutes and complete procedure takes about 1 hour. Now coming to comparing practices of COVID and non-COVID time. Earlier, there was no extra time which was used, but during COVID time, we give a gap of around 1 hour. Fumigation, earlier we used to fumigate only at night, every day at night for 15 minutes. But during COVID time, we are fumigating our OT after every case. Time is same, 15 minutes, and chemical which were used are also same. Instrument sterilization. But in chemical we have added chlorohexidine, but it is not necessary that we are using chlorohexidine. We can also use Virolin, commonly known as Virkon, in COVID time and not COVID time, whichever is easily available to us. Instrument sterilization. In instrument sterilization, earlier we used to just wash with normal soap and water, but during COVID, we used to dip it in multi-enzyme, and after that we wash it with soap and water. A method of surface cleaning is again same as chemical use. If we have availability of chlorohexidine, then we use chlorohexidine. Otherwise, same COVID time and non-COVID time method of surface cleaning is same. To illustrate, I'm presenting two cases which were found to be accidentally COVID positive accidentally COVID positive after surgery. Prior to the surgery, the cases were negative. One of them was on 19 June and another was on 22nd January 2021. Step taken soon after reporting, 2 times fumigation was done. OT was closed for 3 days. And cleaning of OT as per hospital protocol, then culture was sent. And after when culture came negative, and we opened the OT. Staff member who came in contact with COVID positive patient were quarantined for 5 days. All staff members were found to be, luckily found to be COVID negative. Result is nearly 1,000 cases were reported. We modified our practice by giving more time gap between cases and closing our OT for 3 days for while we detected accidental detection of cases. There was no additional morbidity and mortality. Conclusion: sterilization is a OT religious activity which every nursing staff should follow, and we should be familiar to these guidelines and ready to perform as and when required. Thank you.
So thank you, Ritu. Is there any question?
Actually, Ritu, like, this is not a kind of research. It is just like reporting of the practices which you have followed during for sterilization during your area.
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So over to you, Anjali.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you so much for your valuable suggestions, guidance, and the way you taken this session in a well smooth. And of course, Sasi ma'am's smile may relax the presenters, I think. So thank you so much for three of you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All judges also.
And all the presenters and all the attendees, those who were present now and those who were attended this presentation, for everyone, thank you so much from the DNACon team.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.